Hello, good evening, everyone. I am happy to be here with you once again.
Good evening.
Yes, it's such a very great privilege. You know, the book we are reading, and I'm happy that we are making progress because right now we are now in chapter part 2 of the book, and we are moving to session 3. So we will proceed from where we stop, and the review I did in the afternoon. So while we are waiting for others to join, let me quickly share with others, and also put the cover of the book on the platform so that those that may probably be joining for the first time will not be confused or be deluded as per what we are presently doing. Yeah, for those of you that find it difficult to sit and study, I assure you this is a very great opportunity for you to be able to engage with books and historical events. Yes, that is a new book released by Babangida, and that is what we've been working on for the past 3 days now. I am glad you are always there to read with us. So we will continue for those of you that were around yesterday, where we're able to read through the exploration of Babangida in the military school. And here we are today. We want to proceed from where we stop. So let me quickly share this on Facebook for those that may want to join in and read with us as well. Yes, and let me also use the opportunity to also share to our platform so that others can as well engage. And we are also going to be talking about some things, and don't forget, at the end of this reading I have already dedicated a particular amount, 10,000, just like we did in the first book that we read. There will be giveaway, and there will be a moment of questions and answer so that people can benefit from what we are doing at the moment. So thank you for always being there with us. We are glad you are joining. We are glad you are here. So we will continue from where we stop without much ado. So let's go on. Remember, the book we are reading is Babangida's book, and it is titled A Journey in Service. a journey in service. You know, there had been jubilations in certain quarters that after 54 or 59 years or 57 years, that somebody had finally come out to accept that the first coup was not an Igbo coup, based on what Babangida wrote in his book. I think they also need to understand that what Babangida wrote is from his own perspective, and he was probably around 21 years of age as at that time, and he was just a young soldier that may not necessarily see what was going on in the front. And he also wrote it there that this is from the perspective of a young soldier like him, who did not see or was not part of the meeting, or was not among the who or the decision makers in the military as at then. So it will be wrong for us to use the account to judge, because he himself was not sure. Just like Boulay himself will always say that this is the way he saw it. So I'm not saying that it was an Igbo coup. Neither am I also saying it wasn't an Igbo coup. But the thing is that there was a coup and people died. And most of the people that were killed were Northerners and the Yorubas. And putting 1 and 2 together, I won't totally blame people that said it was an Igbo coup, because even though a coup that has more than 85% of people that planned it and implemented it as Igbo did not also see single Igbo that was killed in that coup. So there was no single Igbo that was killed in the coup. In fact, a document showed that Erosi was pre-informed before the coup. Many of them actually were aware. There are other documents that also show that even the Sardauna and Tafawa Balewa himself was informed. He was aware of the coup. And his response was that he will not run away, that his life is in the hand of Allah. I could remember the ambassador, a particular ambassador, I think a US or UK ambassador, offered to allow him to come and stay in his house. But we were told that he turned that down, and there were many other offers for him to come and stay in the embassy. But he turned those offers down. So the problem here was not that there was a coup, but what happened after the coup, of which Babangida also made reference to in the book. Now, certain things happened that we discovered that the Igbo women began to taunt the Northerners and begin to taunt their wife, telling them that their husband subdued their wife. And the Northern women started taunting their husband, calling them weaklings, and even saying that they will not allow them to perform their duty in the other room. So some of these things we also heard and we read from historical events that the pogroms in Kanu, Kaduna, Katsina, okay, was as a result of the taunting that the Igbos and their wives begin to measure to the Northerners. So I am not saying that there was a program or there was no program, but people were killed in Kano. A lot of people died in Kano, and majority of people that died in Kano were Igbos. And it was a kind of massacre because this also happened as a form of revenge. And this shows that the aftermath of the coup was bad, just because Ironsi, who is an Igbo man, did not properly manage the aftermath. Number one, the people that participated in the coup, as promised, when Nziogu handed over power to him, were not tried till today. Rather, some of them were promoted in the army, while the others were sent to prison. You will also allow me to say that more than 60% of Nigerian army were Igbo as at then. Though, from the analysis given by the late Chinua Achebe in his book, There Was a Country, he said that there were more Igbos in the army because the Igbos emphasized more on education. And when recruitment were going on, just as we have it in the civil service, it was the people that were educated that were recruited into the army. I am not saying he was wrong. I am not saying he was right. So we won't totally blame them if we have, based on what Chinua Achebe said, if we have majority of Igbos in the army. But that does not mean that other tribes were not educated. Then I can also say that most Yorubas that were educated were not interested in joining army. And that is why the thing affected them. We don't have much Yorubas in the army. The thing affected them very well because they don't have anybody to defend them. So, from this analysis, my conclusion is that if the event after the coup had been properly managed by Ironsi, probably the second coup and the civil war would have been averted. So, having said that, we will now continue from where we stop with Babangida's book. So we proceed to, yesterday we read a young officer and a gentleman. So today we are going to look at the second session in that part 2, title The Nigerian Civil War and the NDA Teaching Years. Don't forget, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida is telling his own story. It is generally agreed that the immediate cause of the Nigerian Civil War were the military coup d'etat of January 1966 and the subsequent counter-coup that followed it between July 29 and September 29 of the same year. As I have said in the previous chapter, those months were some of the darkest in the history of our country. The sporadic killings and the tension created by the unrest compelled some 50,000 Igbos to flee northern Nigeria for the eastern region by the end of July 1966. But the build-up to that painful situation began earlier. After the head of state, General Agoye Ironsi and Lieutenant Colonel Adekunle Fajuyi were abducted by rampaging soldiers in the early hours of July 29, 1966 in Ibadan and taken away. The country was literally without a government for 3 days. Between July 29 and 31, when their whereabouts were unaccounted for, an atmosphere of uncertainty developed. The country enveloped the country. Uncertainty enveloped the country. Brigadier Babafemi Ogundipe, then the most senior military officer after Agoye Ironsi and considered in certain quarters as the natural successor to him, made a broadcast on the afternoon of July 29, 1966, calling for the cooperation of the public in the government effort to restore law and order in the country. In an attempt to further restore calm, Brigadier Ogundipe sent Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon to the Ikeja cantonment to appeal to the group of headstrong northern officers led by Colonel Muritala Muhammad, Major Shitu Alao, Musa Usman and Captain Joe Garuba, who were spoiling for a fight and even toying with the idea of a succession. Those efforts didn't yield results. Then, after a series of behind-the-scenes negotiations brokered by such top civil servants as Alhaji Sule Katagum, then chairman of the Federal Public Service Commission, Alhaji Ali Akilu, then head of the Northern Nigerian Civil Service, Chief Justice Sir Adetokunbo Ademola, and 2 foreign diplomats, the British High Commissioner Sir Francis Comey Bruce and the American Ambassador Herbert Matthews. With the adamant northern officers, a compromise was reached. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon emerged on Monday, August 1st, 1966, at 32, the new head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. A statement was subsequently issued and stating that Gowon had been chosen to be commander-in-chief by most of the Supreme Military Council members. The emergence of Lieutenant Colonel Gowon as the new commander-in-chief of the Nigeria Armed Forces marked the beginning of the tension between Gowon and Lieutenant Colonel Emeka Odumegu Ojukwu. In an early morning broadcast from Enugu, Ojukwu rejected Gowon's emergence as head of state, insisting that in the absence of Agoyi Ironsi, the most senior Nigerian army officer in the person of Brigadier Babafemi Ogundipe should be head of state and commander-in-chief. The state of national tension increased. Eager to restore confidence in the country, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon assembled regional politicians, dubbed leaders of thought, to fashion a way forward for the country. Then he turned his attention to the military, making a few tactical changes. Those changes were detailed enough to affect younger officers like me. In early August, I was transferred from the A Squadron Reconnaissance Unit in Kaduna to the B Squadron in Abeokuta. Similar tactical changes took place in various other divisions, but Gowon went further in a move that turned out to be a political masterstroke. In August, he released the leader of the Yorubas, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, from Calabar prison, where he was serving a prison sentence for treason, and secured in the process the much needed support of the Yorubas at that time. Unfortunately, Gowon's commitment to the Igbos that their lives were safe in northern Nigeria were unfulfilled. Almost simultaneously with the deliberation of the leaders of thought taking place in Lagos, perhaps the most horrific killings of Igbo occur in different parts of northern Nigeria on September 29, 1966. The killings were frightening. A deluge of refugees swarmed eastern Nigeria from practically all parts of Nigeria. Faced with this intolerable situation, Ojukwu understandably barred the Eastern Nigerian delegation from further attending Gowon's peace and reconciliation talks in Lagos, insisting that the lives of Igbos outside Eastern Nigeria were unsafe. The country was locked in a national stalemate until Lieutenant General Joseph Ato Ankra, who had become Ghana's head of state after the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah, stepped in by suggesting a neutral and safe venue for an actual reconciliation conference between Ojukwu and the federal government. That intervention, seen as the last chance to prevent an all-out war, led to the famous peace conference in the southern regional town of Ghana, ABBEY, between January 4th and 5th, 1967. That conference between the Eastern Nigerian delegation led by Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu and the federal delegation led by Lieutenant Colonel Gowon resulted in the famous ABBEY Accord. In the absence of fully published records from the federal government regarding what transpired at the ABBEY meeting, the details of what happened have remained speculative. While the published account of the Eastern Nigerian delegation insisted that an agreement for a loose Nigerian federation was agreed to, the federal government claimed that the agreement reached was understood and seen within the framework of a united Nigerian state. The one area of agreement on both sides was that force was not to be used to settle the Nigerian crisis. In response to the ABBEY Accord, the The federal government promulgated Decree 8, which was meant to embody the accord as understood by the federal government. At a meeting of the Supreme Military Council in Benin on March 10, 1967, where Decree 8 was to be ratified by the military governors, Ojukwu boycotted the talks, claiming that the decree violated the spirit and the meaning of the ABBEY Accord. These differences in interpretations were the final trigger for the outbreak of the Nigerian Civil War. Meanwhile, amid the tension and deliberation, I left for the United Kingdom in early April for what was supposed to be a short course at the Royal Armour Corps, based at Bovington Camp in Dorset, in southwest England. This was an advanced course on driving and maintaining armored fighting vehicles and operating vehicles, weapons, systems, and communication equipment. I had looked forward to this course with great interest, quite apart from the fact that the Royal Armour Corps was the British Army Centre of Excellence for training the army in the skills of armoured warfare, and therefore forms the core of the British Army's mounted close combat capability. The centre also derived its reputation from the fact that it had different schools that specialize in signals, communication information system, driving and maintenance (D&M), the specialized AFB Gunnery School, and the Royal Armour Corps Training Regiment. Without question, Dorset was the ideal place to be at that time in my career, but it was not psychologically the best of time for me. The unfolding events at home, which remained a constant source of distraction, took a rapid turn for the worse. Barely days after I left for the United Kingdom, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu received directive from the Eastern Nigerian Consultative Assembly to create a sovereign state out of the Eastern region. To preempt any such moves, Colonel Gowon, on May 27, 1967, proclaimed the division of Nigeria into 12 states, with Eastern Nigeria broken into the 3 states of Southeastern, East Central, and Rivers State. On May 30th, Ojukwu announced the secession of the Eastern region from Nigeria by declaring the Republic of Biafra. The federal government placed an embargo on all shipping activity to and from the new state of Biafra and launched a police action to retake the secessionist territory. When that failed to deter Ojukwu, the federal government declared war on Biafra on July 6, 1967. The Nigerian Civil War had begun. Fortunately, this development at home coincided with the end of my course at Dorset. Without being recalled, I knew that I had to return home to play a role in the struggle to keep the country united. When I arrived, I was sent off to the war front to the 1st Infantry Division in the Nsukka sector, where Colonel Mohammed Shua held sway as commander. My sector commander was my old senior from Bida Secondary School, Major Inua Wushishi. Apparently, When the war broke out on July 6, Colonel Stewart's 1st Infantry Division advanced into Biafra under 2 brigades with 3 battalions each. The 1st Brigade advanced from the axis of Ogunga, Nsukka Road, while the 2nd Brigade advanced on the Gakem, Obudu, Ogoja Road. Despite fierce resistance and heavy casualties in those early days, the 1st Brigade advanced on the town of Nsukka, which fell to the Federal troops on July 14. A few days later, the 2nd Brigade captured Gakem, Obudu, and Ogoja. I had arrived at the war front only days after Nsukka had fallen. Those early days were tough. Clearly, the Nigerian army needed more time to be fully ready for war. Apart from a few peacekeeping operations at home and abroad, the Congo crisis, Tiv riot, the Nigerian army's experience of war on an operational scale was limited. In addition, the 1966 coup and counter-coup had depleted the army of several of its Sandhurst graduates. Indeed, as of the end of July 1966, fewer than 10 officers holding the rank of Lieutenant Colonel were still alive and on duty. Faced with the shortage of experienced officers, we had no choice but to rely on the support of non-commissioned officer, NCO, some of whom may have had combat experience with World War II but were unfamiliar with more modern weaponry. My own experience tells the story of those difficult early days. Although a trained armored officer, I was assigned an infantry role as commander of the 44 Infantry Battalion, also known as the Rangers, when I took over from Lieutenant David Ichogo. While I was acutely aware that the functions of armored and infantry officer overlap in such places as troop training, the evaluation of operational situation, and the promotion of morale and combat efficiency, I also quickly came to terms with the fact that as a young 25-year-old commander of my new battalion, my role was different as an infantry commander. I knew I had to lead attacks and execute offensive and defensive maneuver. My operative words were to lead. I knew this, albeit in theory, but now I was saddled with that function in practice. It was necessary, particularly at the inception of the Civil War, to lead by example, and this is a point that needs to be emphasized here. We had a few ex-servicemen who were unable to handle sophisticated weapons, but we needed to retain them to blend in with more current rules of engagement. However, in retraining them, we needed to prove that we could handle the weapons we were asking them to take and face the enemy as much as they could. We needed to inspire them and boost their morale. The soldiers wanted an officer who would say to them, "Follow me, let's go," and they will follow. No officer who lacked courage or conviction could be effective in the situation before us, particularly as the fighting men believed they were fighting for a just cause to keep the country united. But a curious twist of irony in the reality of the war adversely affected me. There I was, determined to fight to keep the country united. But I also knew that across from us, on the other side, were persons we had trained with, lived with, socialized with, and bonded with as comrades in arms, but who were now our enemies. It was painful, but I knew that it was a job that I had to do and needed to be done. Before I settled down to the realities of combat, events degenerated very rapidly by early August. On August 9, Biafra forces led by Lieutenant Colonel Victor Banjo, who by the way was the first Nigerian director of the Electrical and Mechanical Engineering Corps of the Nigerian Army, crossed their western border through the Niger River into Benin City. By August 21st, Biafran soldiers had reached Ore, in present-day Ondo State, a mere 210 kilometers away from Lagos. The Biafran military administrator of Benin even declared it Republic of Benin. Not unexpectedly, the federal government response to the invasion of Benin was swift. In a full-scale declaration of war, General Gowon put Colonel Murtala Muhammad in command of a newly formed 2nd Infantry Division, with a directive to expel the Biafrans from the Midwestern states, defend the border of the Western states, and to attack Biafra. Although Nigerian troops retook Benin on September 22, the catastrophic attempts of the 2nd Infantry Division under Murtala Muhammad to cross the Niger River from Asaba to Onitsha on October 12, 1967 amounted perhaps to the highest loss of men and materials to the Nigerian side throughout the entire duration of the war. Barely days after the River Niger crossing debacle, the federal government launched another offensive south of Biafra from the Niger Delta using the Lagos Garrison Command under Colonel Benjamin Adekunle, the Black Scorpion, to form the 3rd Infantry Division, which was later renamed the 3rd Marine Commando. On October 17, 1967, aided by considerable firepower from Illusion Hill, 28 bombers flown by the Nigerian Air Force and amphibian forces of the 3rd Marine Commando, Calabar was invaded by Black Scorpion and his men. After 2 days of heavy fighting and losses, Calabar fell to the federal troops. It will be months before Port fell on May 19, 1968. Excuse me. From our end, in the 1st Infantry Division, the northern offensive continued from the Nsukka sector. In those weeks and months, I met several other officers of the Nigerian Army whose paths would cross mine over a sustained period after the Civil War. These officers would include names like Major Abdullah Sheleng, Lieutenant John Inyenga, 2nd Lieutenant Yohana Madaki, and 2nd Lieutenant Haliru Akilu, among others. But even more importantly, I soon confronted and painful. While many films may depict real combat situation, a war situation isn't like the movies. There is nothing like the real thing. there is nothing like the macho myth that says you are not supposed to be scared during battle. No matter the amount of training and preparations before combat, the shadow of death hangs over everything. As I quickly learned, the emotions that come with war are complex. Such feelings vary from just plain fear, anger, grief, guilt, hatred, anxiety, sadness, raw revenge, and sometimes jealousy and even love. And these were so evident during the Civil War. Why it was difficult sometimes to contain the anger or bitterness of troops who, for instance, had just been ambushed by enemy fire and witnessed their colleagues killed. I have never forgotten the sense of camaraderie, duty, and brotherly love that came into play, even in those moments of grief. The vast chunks of uncertainty and unpredictability between these emotions could determine so much in the blink of an eye. Let me attempt to illustrate these realities. In our attempt to capture Enugu after the fall of Nsukka, Lieutenant Colonel Theophilus Danjuma, who had only just relieved Sule Apollo of the command of the detachment of 1st Division at the Nsukka front, began the advance on Enugu on September 12, 1967. Colonel Danjuma's advance was a broad front of 7 battalions, 4th, 21st, and 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and the 82nd, with some 20,000 troops as reinforcement, to make it difficult for the Biafrans to pin us down. Just as we approach Agbani in today's Enugu state, we came